Shalom, 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 Israel. It's your brother Kazakia, and I want to talk briefly about a teaching that we as Maureen consistently get wrong. And since we are Maureen, we have to do better. We have to be the teachers, not the followers. That means that we have to do our research and not teach what everybody else is teaching, so that somebody can rebut the doctrine of us being Israel, because that's what they're trying to do. They could find a loophole in the Hebrew Israelite doctrine, and then they say, well, there's a hole in that whole so-called African Americans being biblical Israelites. So that verse is the very popular verse, which everybody uses, is Deuteronomy 28:68. And we know what it says, but just for the sake of this particular video, it says in 28:68, it says, and Yah shall bring you into Egypt again with ships, by way of whereof I have spoken to thee. Thou shalt see it no more again. And there you shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. Now, the common teaching, the common error that we teach is Deuteronomy 28:68 is talking about Egypt being a place of bondage, not the literal land of Egypt, but Egypt represents bondage or slavery. Okay, from a technical standpoint, you're correct, but we have to make the scripture accurate, which the scripture specifically states that Yah will bring you in Egypt. Okay, now that verse is literally talking about Egypt. Now, someone would say, well, brother, they could just walk they could have just walked from Israel to Egypt. They didn't have to get in ships. Having been in Israel, that's a pretty long walk. When you think about it, from Jerusalem actually is closer by sea. If you go to the coast from Jerusalem, and having been there, it's about an hour and a half or maybe 2 hours max drive from Tel Aviv, which is just north of Ashdod, from Jerusalem to Tel Aviv. So it would make more realistic sense for them to have, if you got on foot from Jerusalem to walk to Egypt, that's a long time, right? But and also, when you understand the sea trade, and I want to share a couple verses that'll kind of help you to speak on that 28:68 accurately, so that you can't be debunked on the basis of our error. Okay. So what I want to present to you is Numbers 24:24 talks about a people called Chittim. Now, if you research and you study from the book of Jasher, we know that Chittim is Romans and Greeks. So those are the people that had gotten into the seafaring trade. Okay. Now, Numbers 24:24, it reads on this wise. Okay. It says, let me just back up a little bit. It says, verse 23 says, he took up a parable and said, alas, who shall live when Yah doeth this? Okay, now this is foreshadowing a prophecy that we just read, right? In Deuteronomy 28:68. This is actually another prophetic foreshadowing of what will befall the children of Israel. Now watch what he says. He says, alas, verse 23. Who shall live when Yah does this? And ships shall come from the coast of Chittim. See that? And it says what it says here. Ships shall come from the coast of Chittim, right? And shall afflict Asher, right? And who? Eber. And he shall perish forever. Okay? So what is that saying? The ships shall come from the isles of the Greeks, the Romans, the seafaring people, and shall afflict Asher and Eber. So that connects with Deuteronomy 28 and 68, which says that Israel shall go back into Egypt in ships. Okay? Now, I want to give you another passage that you can look at. This is kind of, we have to kind of, we say, line upon line, precept upon precept, here a little, there a little, so we can gather the understanding of what the Most High what the prophecy specifically states, right? Okay, so now if we go to, let's go to Daniel 11 and 30, okay? So go to Daniel 11 and 30 right quick. All right, Daniel 11 and 30. All right, let's see what that says there. Okay, so it says, let's just go up just a couple verses before. You can read the whole chapter, but this is basically talking about the changing of the world powers. Okay, so let's start right at verse. Let's start at verse 25. It says, Daniel 11:25. He shall stir up the power of. Let me back up a little bit. This is right in the middle of the thought. Oh wow. I don't want to do a whole exegesis because it's taking a lot of time. But let me just go straight to the verse. Okay, 11 and 30. What I said, 30. It says, for the ships of Chittim shall come against him, therefore he shall be grieved and return and have indignation against the holy covenant. So shall he do, he shall even return and have intelligence with them that forsake the holy covenant. Okay, so now the ships of Chittim shall come against him. So who are those ships of Chittim? Remember when Daniel had the vision? He saw it when Nebuchadnezzar had the vision. He saw the image. And prophet Daniel, he asked him to break down, and he broke down the head of gold and so forth. Talk about Nebuchadnezzar was the head of gold and going down to the world powers. Well, here we have the last world power, which is in conjunction with the 10 toes, and that's whole prophecy. This whole another lesson. I'm trying to do this real fast. Okay, so basically we're talking about the Chittim, or the Roman Empire, that came over to oppress the children of Israel. They came to oppress the children of Israel with ships. That's what happened. So when Israel went into captivity, they came into the land of Israel, right? And just like they did in the West Coast slave trade, they went into the interior, brought us to the coast, and then shipped us out. That's what they did in Israel. They came into Jerusalem, right? Because the other 12 tribes, you didn't have to go into northern Israel, right? And so for the most part, the people that were in Israel, the Israelites of the day, were primarily in Jerusalem, which is north of Egypt, right? Which is kind of like almost exactly east off the coast. So the quickest route to Egypt from Jerusalem would be from Ashdod by way of ship down to Egypt and then into the interior. So the coastline was where they did the seafaring trade. Now, I'm going to show you something. Let's go right quick here. This is just a quick synopsis. I mean, I can do an in-depth lesson on the subject matter, but I want to go straight to the point. So if we go to let's go to Isaiah 23 and 1, okay? Or Yoshiyahu 23 and 1. We're going to go there right quick. Okay, 23. I'm going to read I'm going to read just a single verse, just to expedite the time. Okay, so he says, the burden of Tyre. Now we got another name here, Tyre. How, you ships of Tarshish? Okay, for it is laid waste, so that there is no house to enter in from the land of Chittim. Right, it is revealed to them. Be ye still, you inhabitants of the isles, thou whom the merchants of Zidon that passed over the sea have replenished. Now, I'm gonna give you this here, and you got to do the research. You got to look in the scriptures. You got to pull it out and to get the whole understanding. The seafarer people became traders with Israel. Okay, that's how they got partnership to be able to come and go in and out of the land to do trade. Okay, what they did was they turned on the people, the inhabitants of the land, And this was all prophetic, right? And what did they do? Okay, I'm going to take you to one more place, and I'm going to close this out. Okay, we go to Ezekiel 27 and 12. Okay, so let's go to your Kevskel or Ezekiel 27 and 12. Right. All right, real quick. Ezekiel or your Kevskel 27 and 12. All right. So 27 and 12. Okay. It says, Tarshish was thy merchants, by reason of the multitude of all the land of riches, with silver, iron, tin, lead. They traded in their fairs. What I just said, right? Okay. Yavan, right? One of the sons of Japheth. Tubal, another son of Japheth. And Meshach, another son of Japheth. They were thy merchants. See, so now what had happened was the sea trade had started with ships by this time. By time prophecy, the Most High's time was so accurate that by the time that Israel had went to the height of their apostasy, the sea trade had started with the sons of Chittim, or the Romans and Greeks. By this time, it says here, Tarshish was thy merchant. Yavan, Tubal, verse 13. Yavan, Tubal, Meshach, they were thy merchant. They traded the persons of men and vessels of brass in thy market. So who was the persons of men that they traded? Israel. Okay? So Deuteronomy 28:68 accurately is talking about the children of Israel going back to literal land of Egypt by the sea trade, by the sons of Chittim, the Romans and the Greeks, right? And it said then, now if we go back to Deuteronomy 28, now it makes more sense now. So you can't debunk that and say, see, Egypt, you know, they'll use that to kill us, but we got to be accurate with it. So if you go back to Deuteronomy 28, right, as I close out here, 28 and 68, now we read it again and we read it properly. It says, Yah shall bring you into Egypt again. So the prophecy said that the Most High is going to bring Israel into Egypt one more time. We're not talking about America. We're not talking about other places. We're talking about literal land of Egypt. From there, he says, he will bring you into Egypt again with ships. And then he said, by the way whereof I spoke. So that's the part people miss. What did the Most High speak? He spoke through the prophets that the ships shall come from Chittim to afflict Eber and Asher, right? Who's Asher? Asher's the Syrians, right? Okay. And then he said, by way of which Yah spoke unto thee, and thou shalt see it no more again. Now, we was taken out of Egypt to not see it again, to be taken into the ships and to be scattered, because we did come in ships. That part's accurate. But we went to Egypt in ships, and from Egypt we went in ships to other parts of the world, to the four corners, right, of the world. He says, thou shalt see it no more again, and there you shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen. See that? From there, so from Egypt we went. We can't dismiss the trans-Saharan slave trade, because we went from Babylon to Timbuktu. But how do we get to Timbuktu? Right? Through the sea trade, right? Through also the crossing of the trans-Saharan, right? So we got into those areas of the sons of Japheth, Tarshish, through ways of ship, just like it says in the biblical text, and there's no error there. Now, I'll leave you with this. The Messiah said in Luke 24, I think it is. Luke 24, is it 24 and 24 or 21 and 24? I think it's 21 and 24. Let's see. Hold on a second, right? Luke 21:24 says this, as I close. They shall fall by the edge of the sword, and shall be led away captive into all nations, and Jerusalem shall be trodden down by the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles fulfilled. So what happened there? Okay, prophecy being fulfilled again, right? Jerusalem was trodden down by the Gentiles. So what did happen to the Israelites? They were forced out of Jerusalem into where? To the coast where the ships was, and the ships took them back to Egypt, where they became now the commodity of the United Nations of that day. And then from there they were sold as male and female slaves to the nations. And that's the accurate interpretation of Deuteronomy 28:68. Egypt, literally, Israel went back to Egypt, and from there Israel was sold on slave ships and went to the four corners, like the Messiah said, shall be led away captive into all nations. And 21:24, some kind of way I jumped out of 21. So 21 and 24, here it is. So he says, read it again. And they shall fall by the edge of the sword, and they shall be led away captive into all nations, and Jerusalem shall be trodden down by the Gentiles till the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. So that is accurately connected. We got to connect all these prophecies together with what happened during the day when Jerusalem, when the Romans besieged Jerusalem. We already know that. Everybody get that part right. Yeah, Romans can't besiege Jerusalem, but we leave out the pertinent information that they took them to the coast, and then they just took them back to Egypt, and from there they distributed them to the four corners of the earth, just like it says in the prophecy. That's all I got. Until next time, shalom, shalom, shalom.